Welcome to episode 134 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week, we play Wide Ocean, Big Jacket. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob McCourt, and today I have two friends with me. The first friend, you know him, you love him. His name is Michael Ruffalo.
I'm excited to talk about a game that reminds me of cake.
And here to talk about cake with us is our second friend, Mo Murtati.
This game could have been an email, not gonna lie.
Mo coming in with the hot takes right from the go.
The hottest takes. Today we are talking about Wide Ocean, Big Jacket, developed by Turnfollow, published by Tender Claws, available on Switch, Windows, and Linux, originally released on January 22nd, 2020. Let's start this, how we start all of our shows, with the fast pitch, a one-sentence description of the game. Who wants to go first?
All right, here we go. I think a shorter hike than I was expecting.
Wow.
Pun intended.
Mo's just savage right now.
Mm-hmm. I will go second and say this is the first short film that budding directors make the video game. Michael.
You guys are way more savage than me. I will say it is a precocious child simulator.
Oh, I actually didn't mean mine in a bad way. I meant it in a prescriptive way of it is a student film that comes with the good and the bad.
Well,
I've made some really bad student films.
Tell me.
This is not one of them.
Tell me all about them. What signals a good or a bad student film, and what are the trappings? What are the things we expect?
What I love in a good student film is one that just takes a big swing and punches above its weight. And I find that the 10,000 words of dialogue in this game really punch above the, hey, this is an hour-long trip simulator indie game. It punches above that weight.
Which means it's better at it?
Which means it's better than it should be on paper.
Okay.
I like this game. Let's just start there.
Okay.
Let's talk about the genesis of how this happened. I was the one who was like, Mike, go ahead. You don't like this.
Well, it's not that I don't like this. I also want to know, what are the signs of a bad student film?
I can definitely catch that. A bad student game would be something where there's hiccups, there's stuttering. Maybe some objects are hitting each other, or maybe the story doesn't fit right, and some sections are padded in. We usually play some pretty good games. This one wasn't bad from that sense in general, but I think in terms of memorable moments, I doubt I will remember anything from this game a month from now. I could be the outlier, but that's just my perspective for this one.
I think you guys are jumping right to the conclusion before we've had any exploration.
I was going to read off a quote from The Verge, but we could actually go through the time capsule first if you'd like.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, hey, the time capsule. Let's just tell you about what happened around the release of this game. Just to give you some context, this game came out in January of 2020.
Just before the pandemic.
Just before the pandemic. It was a slow time in games. Here are a few things that came out in the month of January. The final episode of Kentucky Route Zero and the full package on consoles. We had the Walking Dead games that came out on Switch. DBZ Kakarot came out right around the release of this game, and another similar title, Coffee Talk, which is a fun indie that I'm going to push you guys to play sometime on this podcast.
Interesting. We know Mo is all tied up with the DBZ game, Mr. Shenron himself. But I can't remember what I was playing at this time. I just know that this is not a game that would normally have ended up on my radar. This is a very, what I would call an Itch.io game. Not only
and
did
what is Itch.io?
Itch.io's, I think it is the place of the most quirky indie games. It is the most bite-sized games that would have otherwise been part of a demo scene in a past life. It is a storefront for only the most quirkiest of quirk, and it really does have a home there.
It does have a home there because it was actually in the bundle for racial equality, which was a huge bundle that came out, I think, in 2020. That was like $5, and you got like hundreds of games in it. So if you purchased that bundle and supported that cause, you have this in your itch.io library.
I wish I would have known about that, because I paid the full MSRP for this guy. A nice little $9.99 Canadian on the Nintendo Switch.
You guys could figure out if I was happy with that. Also just in a recent bundle on itch.io, and I'm pretty sure I let you know, Mo, that it was part of that bundle too, that you could have gotten it for $5 minimum, but obviously encouraged to spend the full amount and support a good cause.
Let me tell you what I was playing at that time, because I actually keep track, unsurprisingly, of when I play games and what I'm playing. So at that time, I was flipping back and forth between Pokemon Sword and Shield, finishing that up, and then Detroit Become Human. For this very podcast.
Wow.
Well then.
Titles.
I'm all good games. All good games.
All good games. This dev made some other small indie titles, including one that got a little bit of zeitgeist on social from the development community called Packing Up the Rest of Your Life on the Last Day at Your Old Apartment. Think of it as like the progenitor to Unpacking, which just came out on Xbox Game Pass.
You just sent me for a ride, because that title is everything I would have expected from a developer who made this game. I'm surprised that this game doesn't have a title like that.
A lot of words, huh?
Very wordy. Almost like the characters in this game.
I don't think there was much memorable marketing behind this game, but I want to know text-based adventures, games that reminded you of this game, if anything else comes to mind before we jump into this game.
I think it just my little intro, I said a shorter hike, essentially because just cosmetically it looked kind of like the same art style.
Similar
so I was expecting
palette.
some kind of mini adventure. So that's kind of the first thing that came up, but that's the only one that comes to top of my mind right now.
Yeah, a short hike also came to mind. I think that's a really good call out, Mo. Jacob, before we got on, I think you had mentioned, or the words 30 Flights of Loving came out of your mouth, and that also felt like an interesting call out that had some relation. To be honest, there weren't too many games that stuck out to me. But it does have an art style that feels familiar. It feels like a cartoon I've watched at some point, but I wouldn't be
sticking around.
Oh, maybe a little bit more realistic than sticking around. But yes,
Pepper Ann.
I barely remember Pepper Ann. But yes,
Okay.
it's like a cartoon I have seen that I wouldn't be able to tell you the name of.
Okay.
Someone with
Holy mackerel?
maybe a fuzzier version of Hey Arnold.
Okay. Yeah.
Get out of here, football head.
Because I think that was in... Was it that one? You remember the show Kaboom on Nickelodeon? It was like a show that was a cartoon and then had live action stuff in it too.
I never watched Nickelodeon. I was a YTV kid.
Right. Yeah.
Most throwing up gang signs.
Kabam.
Yeah,
that's the life
we're
I live too,
sliming
Mike.
each other.
Yeah.
We're the OG. We're the source of all the Canadian cartoons that American kids grew up on.
Yeah. Oh, the best. Before we dive in, I want to know how you played it. I played it on Switch. Mo played it on Switch.
I played it on PC.
Ooh,
Nice.
Did
you like it on keyboard?
I hated it on keyboard, but that was just mostly because I had to get back to using keyboard. I'm so used to being able to click on things and move a cursor around, at least with a controller at a minimum. I was frustrated at first when I loaded into this game that I couldn't use a mouse to click on the menu, and that I had to use a keyboard. And also, and this is just a minor gripe that I have to get out now, I thought it was very frustrating that the enter key did not confirm or select anything, and that you had to hit spacebar. But that's the end of me griping.
No, I had, to be honest, Mike, you using a mouse and keyboard, I had the Joy-Cons on the Nintendo Switch, and it wasn't the greatest movement mechanic. It was a little bit clunky, but I kind of got over it quick because I wasn't expecting this game to be like a navigation-heavy 3D universe. It just needed to get to point A to point B, and it did that fine. There was no... I think this will be my last complaint because I don't want to completely bury an indie game. As someone who wants to build indie games as well, I don't want to say the best ones are the worst, because then if I create something, oh man, here comes the criticism.
The listener now knows 10 minutes in is where all the complaints stop.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to set up this game with a quote from DM Moore at The Verge, because I think it did a really good job when I was researching this episode of setting up what this game is, and then we can dive right into it.
Hit me with
this
it.
game, you aren't controlling a specific character. Instead, you're acting more as a scene director. Any choices you're asked to make less to do with changing the words or the path of the narrative and more to do with the experience you are having viewing it. It's something like 30 Flights of Loving or Virginia, which both use film techniques like cross-cutting to jump between the moments in the story, combined with aspects of Kentucky Route Zero's player as co-writer approach to interactive storytelling.
Virginia is a great call out there.
Yeah, and I know, just as a reminder, we've played that game. You can find it in the feed. It's probably on my top 25 games of all time list. Did you guys like Virginia as well? I think you were colder on it than I was.
I mean, I think the listener should go back and listen to our Virginia episode. But I really did enjoy Virginia. I think there were elements. I think with every game we play, there are gripes and complaints that I have. But on the whole, I remember my experience with Virginia being pretty good. I think I had some issues with how clear the story was at times, but I'll leave that to the listener to go back and remind me of.
And that's episode 20. We played that a long time ago. If you're interested in that, we put that out in 2017.
And we're going to link that in the description, in the notes of this episode.
So it's an interactive story where you take control of one of 4 characters going on a little camping beach vacation, if you will. And each of the characters has their own, stuff going on and relationship interdynamics that you need to explore. Is that a simplistic way to think about it, or is that kind of it?
Yeah, but I even add a little bit more, essentially saying there's 2 groups. There's the younger kids and then the older adults that are supervising, and that plays a dynamic as well because they have their own issues or situations that they kind of go over, and so do the kids. And eventually, later on, they kind of combine the 2, but I would almost consider it 2 sets of characters.
Yep, and those characters are Uncle Brad and Chloanne, which I've never heard the name Chloanne before, but there's a first time for everything.
What about Mord?
And then Mord, and Mord is also a name.
Is it
M-O-R-D. M-O-R-D.
Wow. Yeah.
And then Ben.
Yeah. Yes. I thought this, from a weird names aside, I mean, the odd names actually, to be honest, remind me a bit of J.D. Salinger. The Franny and Zooey and, all of the odd names of the Glass family. That's kind of what it reminded me of. But at the same, and then I think actually the more that I say it, the more I realize that's also where the precocious child who speaks like they are much older than they actually are, from a wealth of experience that they don't yet have, actually, likely takes reference or inspiration from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think the one thing that kind of caught me when when you start the game, they're kind of introducing each character, and I think it's Mord. Her character vividly reminded me of, if anyone watched Bob's Burgers, the daughter, who's very outspoken and trying to conquer the universe kind of personality. I immediately kind of just kept visualizing her as that character and her speaking. That's the voice that was in my head when I was reading her narration.
She's a real Helga Pataki.
And Mo, you mean Louise Belcher, right? Kristen Shaw's character?
Yes, Louise,
yes,
yeah.
Louise. I think that's kind of the charm and the funny element of Bob's Burgers. It's the youngest is also the most aware, in control, taking charge of the world. I have to say, I thought it was a bit off-putting to have a character this young. I think they say 12 years
13,
old?
13?
12 or 13. Yeah. Be this precocious where they are speaking in long tracks with more character and energy than everyone else combined. And I thought that was just a little bit off-putting because it just felt a bit more like it was an adult writing a character as if they were a 12 or 13-year-old girl. But instead of actually writing what a 12 or 13-year-old girl is. And, I argue with myself about this because there's someone that Mo and I went to school with that kind of was this person, was Mord in a lot of ways, growing up, and maybe around that age, but this just took it to another level. It just felt like a little bit too unbelievable for what it was. And that aside, I thought the dialogue, especially with Mord, was fun. You know, I like the little repartee that she had with almost every character.
I'm going to debate you, Michael, because I agree, but I also think that there was like a youthful vulnerability in some of the things that she was saying. So one of the major, I guess, themes across this whole hour to hour and a half experience is about like love and sex. And it's very strange, like having a 13-year-old be like, basically walk herself into the birds and the bees with an adult that is very unwilling to have that conversation. And I think that there was like a maturity there that like, there was a maturity at 13 that like boys definitely don't have. So I would agree that like she was very smart and probably beyond her years, but then there was still parts of, you know, herself that like were very much still young and youthful.
Yeah, I mean, they frame the experience of the character in a coming of age, like having really early conversations about what it means to be an adult and to be sexual. But I think the dialogue didn't exactly match with the experience that they were trying to portray. And to me, it kind of smelled like, you know, when you can tell a guy is writing for a woman but hasn't really heard a woman speak for a while.
Yeah.
I got
fails
that.
a Bechdel test immediately.
I felt a very similar vibe of like writing for young characters that haven't talked to a kid in a while. And I don't mean that as a shot. It just felt a little bit more true. And to be honest, I did find the dialogue here entertaining. So it was probably better to not be realistic and be more entertaining. That said, it was a little jarring and took me out of it just a bit.
Yeah, and I feel a little bit of column A and column B between you two. Like it was a little over the top, but there was some like moments where you can tell, you know, this is a child. Like it's a little imbalance of both.
Because I think they did nail the relationship between like Brad and Chloanne. Obviously, like Brad says like, hey, aren't these kids great? Wouldn't it be great? I'm paraphrasing, but like, these kids are great. Wouldn't it be great if we had kids? And Chloanne and him had clearly had the conversation before they got married of like, Chloanne doesn't want children and Brad just kind of going along with it, which is a shaky foundation for a relationship if I've ever seen one, but very much like, hey, aren't kids great? What if we had our own? And her kind of retorting and saying like, I said no, and not coming to a resolution, which is really how that conversation goes all the time.
Totally, but I saw that in almost a different way, because yeah, she did close them off and say, I don't want kids, this is what you signed up for, this is me kind of thing. But afterwards, there was a little bit of a dialogue where it was like, don't you love having these kids around? Maybe let's keep doing this. I think that kind of is the sign to the next part of the conversation, because maybe 2 camping trips later, that conversation becomes a little bit different.
Maybe they're divorced after that.
Ooh.
Yep, fair.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Jacob, that the Brad and Chloanne conversation was, you know, realistic. It felt like an adult conversation that I've, you know, seen before, that I've heard people have, and that I would expect to have. And I even felt the Mord and Ben conversations were reflective of conversations I've seen in like young relationships and the dynamics there. There's something about all of them at the same time that I thought was interesting and refreshing. I especially loved when the adults and the kids had their exchanges a lot more than the kids talk to the other kids or the adults talk to the other adults. Like, there is a moment in here when Brad realizes the jokey comment he made could have been or was being like misunderstood or being lost in communication, and just strips it down and speaks very honestly, vulnerably, straight up to Ben, to kind of like take it on himself when he didn't need to make sure Ben didn't feel self-conscious at all. And I thought like, oh, like not only is that really good, like a good character, but it was also just like a real sign of maturity, other than saying like, this is an adult. Like this is a mature adult who's willing to put their needs behind some, a kid's needs and recognizing how important it is to support kids in those moments.
I wonder how different it would have been if like they were the actual like parents. Like instead of the aunt and uncle relationship, we actually had the like, because clearly Brad's trying to be the cool uncle. Would you think it would have changed if it was like Mord's parents? I think it would have, like, very much so.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is like, so one of the situations, the kids kind of break away and go to the beach on their own, kind of away from the parents. I feel like if there were parents, they might have had more resistance, whereas like the aunt and uncle are like, yeah, fine, like they'll learn, let them learn. They're more like letting them kind of experience their own life and maybe getting some bumps and bruises and not protecting them from the bumps and bruises. So yeah, I think that might have changed.
I think you're also better positioned to have that conversation. Like it seems like the crux of this game is around the conversation around like sexuality. And I don't think you have that conversation smoothly with parents. I think it's a lot easier to have that with your cool aunt or uncle. When you see how they model a relationship, when you don't have that same baggage, I think you might when it's your parents. But I think that's all reflective of the relationship dynamics that people have with their own parents and all of that. This is just, I think, a trope or a standard that I've seen in media generally.
Those stories of love, though, are punctuated, and I think we've kind of alluded to it, but like punctuated with some like really like quippy, funny moments. Like when we're telling stories around the fire, or when Brad is drinking, in front of the kids, or we're making hot dogs. I really like that because it was not just, it's only a 60 to 90 minute game, but like I feel like there was some really nice small moments in there of levity between the moments of let's talk about all the issues that come with, or in all the baggage that comes with love.
Ben is a master storyteller. That's all I have to say. For a quiet kid, man. He's so good at it.
Mm-hmm. What was his story about? I don't remember.
So Ben's story is about one day when his parents are either out of the house or taking their nap. He sees a rat come up the drain. And it gets stuck in the sink. And he feeds it. And each day another rat comes until there's so many rats that they start attacking him. And I won't spoil too much more, but it's such a great moment because at the end, Chloanne asks, like, is that real? Like, did that actually happen? Is that a true story? And like, no, right? Obviously not. But it's so well told, and not from the character that you expect to tell it either, that it really connects.
Or maybe he saw a mouse in his bathroom one time and then embellished it into this really great long story.
He caught a 12-foot fish.
I need to ask the question, did you guys play, because obviously there's like the core content revolving around the 4 characters that we talked about. Did you guys play the kind of add-on or the stuff that came after the credits?
I loaded up the chapter. I played half of the first one with the lumber guy, and I closed it just because I don't know, I didn't have any motivation to. I didn't know if there was anything extra, and since it was bonus, I'm like, I don't know if I want to continue.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You need to explain this to me.
Okay, so there's an epilogue in the game that stars 2 of the characters that you kind of just really bump into in the kind of through the course of the story. Yeah, it's Alan and Meryl, and one of them's a park ranger, and then the other one, again, it's like a 20-minute story, so I didn't fully get who they both were, but one was a park ranger and the other was just, I think, either a partner or a friend. And they basically just go down to the beach and look for a teen's phone and then drive back to their shack. And again, you get more kind of really quippy dialogue between the two, but it acts as, I guess, a side story that they put out in 2020, but not essential. I think it's just like a fun thing that came after the credits. But the core of this game is obviously on the 4 characters that we talked about before.
I really do feel like this game is either a great episode in a series that maybe comes in the middle of the series, or a really good short film. Like
that's a great way to put it, Mike. Yeah.
It feels like you walk into this with some, I like this in stories when they do it. When you walk into characters that are in the middle of something that you might have some expectation of knowing who they are. But they do a good job like establishing relationships and characters. And even if I think some of these characters are overwritten, on the whole, like I really did enjoy that. It feels like an episode.
Do you have any like examples of like movies? I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have any examples of like movies or TV shows? Because the coming of age story is my specialty, and like I wrote down a few suggestions of like if people liked Wide Ocean Big Jacket, I have 2 movie suggestions that they should go and watch.
Ooh,
let me jump into it.
Yeah, you go first.
Thinking. So I'm going to refer to 2 movies. They both came out. One of them came out in 2013, and the other came out. Actually, they both came out in 2013. So the first is Kings of Summer by Jordan Vogt Roberts. It stars Nick Robinson, and it's about like 4 kids like exploring a creek in the summertime and what goes along with that. I believe in that movie they like run away from their parents and try and live in the woods, and it's really, really fun. And the second movie actually has Steve Carell in it, and it's called The Way, Way Back. And it's about a kid in the summertime whose father, Steve Carell, is really, really terrible. And it's just like his coming of age over a summer at a local water park. So like they're both low budget movies. They're both like, I think Fox Spotlight or Searchlight Pictures. So I would highly encourage you if you like this. Those are 2 suggestions for you.
Kings of Summer is really good. The other one, you mentioned Steve Carell. It makes me think of Little Miss Sunshine on some level. Oh man,
I have one. I just can't remember the name. It's the Jonah Hill movie.
The Jonah Hill movie?
The one about the coming of age of the skaters. No. He directed it.
Oh, mid-90s.
Mid-90s
is
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Just because like there's a lot of kids kind of discovering themselves and learning about themselves with other kids, and there are adults in there that kind of help out along. I don't know. Just that's the one thing.
Yeah, I'd say, man, it's not the same, but it's still got that precocious kid overwritten to some extent vibe, and that's Rushmore. Wes Anderson's Rushmore is about Jason the Schwartzman. It's not about Jason Schwartzman, but Jason Schwartzman is an overachieving and underachieving kid prodigy at a private school. So it carries, if you like that like moored dialogue with some Ben in the background, Rushmore is definitely something to check out.
I honestly thought you were going to like recommend a Linklater movie. Is that how you say his name?
Boyhood?
Linklater? Yeah, like Boyhood.
I'm not a huge Boyhood fan. I think it's like interesting for what they did, but not especially like in love with it otherwise. Yeah.
So I guess to bring it back, this is a very short game. We kind of described what it looked like. It's like what if a coloring book kind of aesthetic, if you will, like very a short hike, yellows and mostly yellows, but some other colors in there too. Is there anything else that we want to touch on here as far as how this game goes? Basically, like you're just moving through it, and then it's very dialogue focused. You're moving characters around. There are certain little mini games, if you wish. There are like a bird watching mini game. But I think we talked through most of it. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add on here that we haven't talked through?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like we've talked about the 2 conversations, but I think the way this game is structured is it's got an A plot and a B plot, right? They're the 2 stories that move simultaneously, and at moments they cross and interweave. Like you can tell that leading up, Brad's going to lead up to the conversation about should we have kids, and it's when Chloanne's smoking a cigarette by the kids. He says like, oh, maybe the secondhand smoke. Like you can see the paternal elements of him being like set up, and you can see how those start to weave. And I think this is a great script, and I really do think that this could be a really good episode of TV, a really good short film. And I think that as a game, it might not be to its strengths in this format, but I did enjoy it as much as I had issues with it along the way.
Yeah, if you enjoy a good coming of age story, and you have patience for an indie game that, doesn't necessarily put like gameplay first and throw gameplay in your face, I think that this is like a really fun rainy day jaunt. I don't know, Mo, if you kind of felt the same way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to putting it too. It's so short that like it's It's a good fill for a rainy day, especially if you're lucky enough to get it in the bundle. Like if you have it in your Steam collection right now, it's an easy download and kind of finish it.
This is the opposite take of what I think you had at the beginning of this episode, Mo. You came in with the heat, and now you're a bit of a softie.
At the end of the day, literally, it could have been an email. The story. The thing is, like, it's more so maybe I kind of like a longer storyline. I like to kind of be like played along a little bit longer, and so maybe, like you said, Mike, the fact that this seemed like almost like an episode from a series, like if there was like 2 episodes after or an episode before coming out as a total package, this could be a really like good game because the storytelling is what's driving it. However, I didn't get enough to be like, wow, this is the greatest game ever, blah, blah, blah. Like, comparing to a lot of games we've played, indie, small, short titles, I wouldn't say this is even close to the top ones I've played, at least. I'd put almost all the ones we've played on the podcast ahead of it, but it doesn't take away from a great short snapshot of a story that, if you have it installed, cool, but if you don't and you're my friend, I wouldn't recommend it. But
excuse me for a moment, I'm dizzy because my head was spinning. Mo said there wasn't enough story here for him. I've never once met Mo where he wanted more story in a game. He wanted more text. He wanted more of the non-shooty stabby bits.
And this I completely credit to you guys. You know, you guys kind of showed me the light that it's not just pew pew blast championship trophy. There may be a little bit more to things. So now that I kind of set my expectations. If it's a story game, you better be giving me that story because I'm extra heated if I don't get it. And that's kind of where my take kind of comes in with this game. Like there wasn't enough for me to kind of praise the story.
The other thing that I want out of this, Mo, is I want to see what the email you would write for this game is. If this game could be an email, what would the email read?
Hey, let's go camping. Oh, look, birds. Can we have a sex ed class at the campsite? No. Okay. There's a skeleton in the woods. We use it to glow up the area so we're not scared of the bears that might eat us. Okay. See you guys next week. That's the email.
And what's the subject line? Is it warning rattlesnakes or is it something else?
Bring your own firewood.
Okay. Fair. What one last thing before we wrap this. What do you think the title means? Because the title reminded me of Cake's hit song from the 90s, Short Skirt, Long Jacket. But which apparently I found out just before this call, neither of you know. Nope. Neither of you have any experience with. And yeah, my head continues to spin.
Me no. What is that song about? You played it for us, and I was just like, I don't know.
It's about a short skirt and a long jacket.
Nope.
Just saying the words again is not helpful.
I honestly, I can't believe you don't know it.
What is Wide Ocean Big Jacket? I honestly don't know what that title alludes to.
Okay.
Yeah, no idea.
I have a guess.
I think maybe it touches on that moment when like the kids are at the beach and they're like loving the view with the stars and like the water. So I thought maybe that, but I don't get the jacket part. I'm guessing it's something like that the developer kind of has a reason for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
To me, it's like the trope of like the coming of age movie is like we pick a very like ambiguous, floaty, like words don't mean a lot kind of title. I mean, think about the movies that I just named, like The Way Back and Kings of Summer. Like that is this. They came with the coming of age movie title as a game.
You've got one more movie on the tip of my tongue. It's got Macaulay Culkin.
Yup. He got stung by being done, right?
Yes.
My Girl?
My Girl, yes.
Yep.
Kind of reminds me of My Girl.
Uh-huh. That is, hold on, is that John Candy? No, that's Dan Aykroyd.
Is it Dan Aykroyd?
Dan Aykroyd. I think so.
It's a Rob Reiner film, I'm pretty sure.
Yep. And it's Halloween, Freaky Friday.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the audience has had enough of us trying to like feel in the dark for movies that are related to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so very interesting to see this is a litmus test for how Mo has grown in his taste in games and what he's looking for in them. I'm glad that I experienced it. I did generally enjoy it, even if I felt there were moments that it took me out of it. So yeah, I'd recommend this to most people.
I would as well, and I think that we've talked about a lot of the episodes that we've done before. Again, if you want to listen to our 30 Flights of Lubin episode, that was episode 12, Virginia episode 20, and then Kentucky Route Zero we started at episode 87. If you like this or want more games like this, listen to those pods, because they're in the feed. Mo, any final thoughts before we close it out?
I didn't like this game, and I wouldn't recommend it, just to kind of have that contrast, but... I think there's so much more you could play. There's so many other things. It's like you said, Jacob, if you had like an hour and there's nothing else and it's installed, give it a shot. It's a cool little story, but you can spend that hour playing an hour of something else.
Well, hey, there are your thoughts about Wide Ocean, Big Jacket, a coming-of-age story that Mo can summarize in email form. You can find all things Left Behind Game Club on Twitter at Left Behind Club, on Instagram at Left Behind Game Club, and on our Discord server at leftbehindgame.club/Discord. If you enjoyed the show, do us 2 favors, send it to a friend, and give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. Mike, if people want to find you on the internet, where can they do so?
People can find me at RuffaloM on most social places online, michaelruffalo.com, or in the Discord server. Mo, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at almost all social media platforms at Murtati. I'm probably more active on the Discord, I guess, and on Instagram as well. Jacob, where can the fine folks find you?
You can find me on the internet at Jacob McCourt, JACOBMCCOURT. Twitter's probably the best place to find me. I host another podcast called Cutscenes. It's a video game movie podcast. We just wrapped up season 3. You can find all them episodes on your podcasting platform of choice or at cutscenes.ca. Michael, my friend, please take us home.
And that, my friends, is one less game left behind. And a long jacket.
Hey, I'm Jacob McCourt.
I'm Katie Lesbrance.
And I'm Travis Colnett.
We are hosting a brand new podcast called Cutscenes.
There are tons of video game podcasts and tons of TV film podcasts, but we're going to bring you the intersection of both and talk about video game, movies, and TV.
I know what you're thinking. Aren't most of them not very good? Wrong. Some of them are fine. And we're going to tell you all about them.
Make sure to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. Follow us on Twitter at cutscenes_pod. And most importantly, give us a listen.
See you soon.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.